Good morning. I'm Dina Ladd, the Executive Director for the Missouri Cures Education Foundation. Our mission is to protect and promote medical research in the state of Missouri. 7 years ago, we started the Women in Science, Entrepreneurship, and Research Conference here in St. Louis. This is our 5th year in Columbia. We now do the WISER events all around the state. I'd like to invite you to join our Facebook WISER group page where you can post interesting articles and chat with other women around the state, and also invite you to listen to the WISER Conversation podcast. I would also invite you to register for our St. Louis WISER virtual lunch series, which will be November 10th, 11th, and 12th. Today we are discussing professional development, and we have a fantastic group of Columbia women on our panel. During our discussion, please feel free to submit questions in the chat box, and at the end, I'll try to have the panel answer as many as possible. So let's start our discussion. I'd like to introduce our panel. Carolyn Henry, Dean of College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Missouri. Debbie Allen, Graduate Initiatives Coordinator for the Bond Life Science Center at University of Missouri. Susan Hart, Vice President of Hubert Builders. And Sheila Grant, the Associate Vice Chancellor of Research and Strategic Initiatives at University of Missouri, College of Engineering. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for getting up bright and early. Let's begin our discussion. We're going to start off by talking about mentorship. Mentorship can play a critical role in our careers and our professional growth. What should you look for when seeking out a mentor? And Debbie, I'm going to let you kick it off.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here and to join in this really great discussion this morning with some wonderful women, several whom I've known for a while and some that I've just met. So it's great to be here. I feel very strongly about the mentorship role that I play in my position at the University of Missouri with doctoral students across the life sciences disciplines. And just a couple of points of interest in that good mentors, I don't think you can have too many mentors. Mentors can come into your life at various stages, and many mentors stay with you your entire career, and that's really an important role that they play. Certainly, the type of mentors that you are that you want to seek out are people who are genuinely interested in helping others. And some of the qualities that I look for in my mentors, and I try to model these for my graduate students, are certainly being good, active listeners. You can hear people what they say, but you have to really practice being a good listener and not feel the compulsion to take over a conversation until you're asked for your input. I also think good mentors are honest and sincere and experienced, trustworthy, and those are just some of the attributes, the personality attributes that I like to promote when I'm mentoring my students or family or whoever is seeking out my help. So those are just some initial perspectives.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you. So Carolyn, I know you've mentioned in the past that you had male mentors.
Yeah, so veterinary medicine, back when I was starting in the profession, was really dominated by male veterinarians. And even now, I think, a lot of the administrative positions are still men in the profession. And I think that's not a problem. I mean, we talk in some of these women's groups about having to find a woman mentor, and I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it has to be someone that's honest, that's going to tell you what you need to hear. And I like to surround myself with people that are different, maybe from different fields, different backgrounds and perspectives, but people that will show me something that I wouldn't see on my own, or if I just was hanging around people that thought and worked like I did, I wouldn't have that advantage of seeing that other perspective. So I like to put together mentoring groups and have them be very diverse and allow that to drive the mentorship rather than just trying to find someone to model yourself after.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I want to pose this next question to all of you. What career opportunities or mentors helped you get to where you are? And so Susan, I'm going to let you answer that.
I know, I'm thinking about this and looking at the mentors that have been and guided me along my career. I was thinking about the one that was the most unlikely that helped me the most. And he was a retired Army colonel that I met through Rotary. I'm really involved in Rotary as I get to be part of the community. And he took me under his wing when I was about 30 years old. And he saw in me leadership qualities that I did not see as a young professional woman. And he just mentored me in ways, in a military way of, this is a good job for you, you should do this kind of thing. And that was so helpful for me because first, he invited me to tables that I wouldn't have got invited to before. And second, he just guided me in a way, and he was unlikely. And I kept thinking about, what does Colonel Tim see in me? And, you know, I think about the people that have affected me or mentored me, and he's been one of the big ones. So look for those mentors in the unlikely places.
Yeah. So Sheila, I'll throw it to you now.
Hey, well, thanks. Well, let's see, with mentors, I didn't really have a group of mentors. What I found out going through engineering is I needed to let my supervisors and bosses know that I had a desire to become a leader, to gain experience. And we were lucky here at the University of Missouri. We have a leadership development program that I participated in. And then from there, I was very fortunate to have Elizabeth Laboa, who was our first female dean of engineering, come to Mizzou about 5-6 years ago and gave me the opportunity to get a leadership role. And from there, she served as a great mentor for me and so forth. So, you know, in engineering, we have very little women leaders at all. So trying to find someone to act as your mentor was very difficult for me.
Yeah, thank you. Debbie?
Well, I have to say, being a little in the boomer department generation, that I have been inspired by mentors that are younger than I am, and who really inspire me daily with their verve and with their energy, with their experience in areas that I don't have experience with. I also am very fortunate to be the mom of 3 adult kids in their 30s. And so in many ways, the mentorship that I get from my own family, along with those that I work with at the university, have been somewhat an unlikely source of mentorship. And I have to say, it helps me to sort of tune into areas of growth and understanding that I would not have if I didn't have my younger mentors.
Mm-hmm. Carolyn?
Well, I tried to find a mentor coming out of vet school, and I found a card the other day that said, my life could be summarized by the sentence, well, that didn't turn out how I thought it would. The first mentor I had coming out of vet school, I decided that I wanted to work for somebody that owned their own practice and somebody that had business skills, because I felt like I had fresh medical knowledge, but I didn't know how to run a practice. And so I settled on someone that had his own clinic in Montgomery, Alabama. And I was really looking forward to learning the tricks of the trade and running a business. And unfortunately, 3 weeks out of vet school, he rolled a tractor over, broke his leg severely, and he was diabetic and ended up getting gangrene, had his leg amputated, and never came back to work. And so my whole idea to go in with someone that could teach me how to run a business turned into, I'm running a business 3 weeks out of vet school because I didn't think I could do that. So in that case, the mentorship, it was kind of reverse mentorship, but it was really a feet to the fire kind of thing. And in my case, I think that actually allowed me to grow more than I ever would have if I had had a choice of what type of position to put myself into. So I guess that was an accidental non-mentor. Does that count?
Yes, it does. That is
Wow.
all great advice. And I think the lesson here is to keep an open mind, and you never know where your mentors are going to come from. So
Mhm.
thank you. We're going to switch gears a little and talk about communication skills. So we all have a voice, but whether or not we use it in the workplace is another story. So how do you create or maximize opportunities to be heard? And Sheila, I'm going to let you start us off.
Okay, so how are we heard? I think first, in order to be heard, you have to listen. You know, listen, in my case, to what the faculty, the staff, the students, what do they need? And by knowing what they need, then you can be heard. You can help solve the problems or issues that are facing the staff, the students, the faculty. And then really, I think the second thing is to take the initiative. You don't have to have permission to try something new. So if you have an innovative idea that can help the program, then pursue it. As an example, when I took the position as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, you know, I listened, I noticed that the Associate Deans of Research were not really being engaged throughout the campus that highly. And so one of the things I did was establish a monthly meeting with all the Associate Deans of Research to address any issues or problems they may have. So I think we need to listen and then in order to be heard, and then take the initiatives. We don't need their permission to do something new or innovative.
Yeah, that's great advice. Carolyn?
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and something as leaders we need to do more of. Less talking, more listening. And I think also making sure that we're listening and communicating with a very diverse group of people. So if you've got diversity around you, you're going to get those opinions that might not agree with yours, but then will really shape your thinking in an important way. And I think the other thing is just live with integrity and have people know that you are going to be someone that they can confide in, someone that they can count on to have their best interest in mind. So creating that network around you and then always going forward with purpose and integrity.
Yeah. And so staying on the communication skills, you know, we all have to advocate for ourselves in our career, when it's opportunities, whether it's a salary. But how can women be competitive, but at the same time stay, you know, genuine? Because negotiation is very important, but it can be difficult to do that. Susan.
Yes, I believe that women traditionally have not been good negotiators for themselves. But what you look at is they're wonderful negotiators for other individuals. So something that I've used in my life is to use those same techniques that I would use to negotiate for others in asking for things for myself. I had a coach back when people didn't have coaches. I don't even know how I found this person, probably 25 years ago. And he told me something very important that I use a lot of times when I'm negotiating for something for myself that might feel uncomfortable, is that he said, always imagine your loved ones in the room with you and that you're negotiating not just for yourself, but for everybody in your circle, your loved ones. And that mentally has always put me in a good spot, because I am at that point negotiating for others that are very important to me. I think that to stay genuine, you have to also believe in what you're asking for. So believe that you deserve that promotion. Believe that and don't be wishy-washy about it. Just really have, when you go into that room, those facts in your mind of why you belong. I think people talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and it happens to I know it happens to me a lot. Like I will go to something and think, you know, I really do I deserve this? Especially when it comes to awards. I'm terrible at getting awards. I'm like, I don't think I deserve this. Why? There's other people that probably deserve it more. So I think getting rid of that imposter syndrome that's in your mind and knowing that you've worked and what you've done and you deserve it mentally before you walk in that room or have that difficult conversation is so, so important.
Yeah, I love that advice, and I'm glad you touched on imposter syndrome. I think we all at one time have a little touch of that in what we do in our careers and life. Debbie.
Well, I'm echoing 100% what Susan just said. Just a few other thoughts that I that would tie in to this part of our discussion is to be prepared. Do your homework. Be ready for any questions or any concerns that the person you're working with for negotiation might put your way. Stay strong and seek others' perspectives, but truly stay true to yourself. And I think that's where the strength will come, and that will definitely come forth when you're working in negotiation sessions. That's what I would add.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on that, Debbie, because I think before negotiating, we should you do your research, a landscape survey. What is the current market value for a particular job? Evaluate yourself. What is the range that you're willing to work in? Are you willing to walk away from a negotiation? So Carolyn, what is your advice for negotiating in different situations or a difficult situation?
Well, I think the previous folks have touched on this, but knowing your value going in is important. There's a saying that I like by Mel Robbins that says, there will always be someone that doesn't know your worth. Don't let it be you. And so I think you need to believe in yourself when you go into it. And then I think negotiation is all about compromise, not compromising the things that are truly important to you, but coming in with solutions instead of just presenting problems or arguments. I think is very important. And then this is a hard one for me, but in honor of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I will add that she said, speak your mind even if your voice shakes. And so I think as women, we all know that what that experience is like. I'm an angry crier, which makes me so mad because I don't want to be crying, but I get emotional. So I think harnessing that emotion and taking that to the table as well is very important.
Yeah, fantastic. Bringing up RBG, it just gave me chills.
Yeah.
Thank you. Susan, what about, I know in your business, you negotiate against competitors to get jobs and bids and so forth. Can you give us some advice?
Right. Well, it's a small market in which I compete for commercial construction, and it can get very cutthroat. And sometimes I'm even shocked after 30 years how cutthroat it can be. But what I do is I always make sure, and everyone said this, I always make sure that I know my material when I walk in. When I'm going to negotiate with a client and I know that the others have been in the room, I kind of have an idea of what they've said, what they perceive are my company's weaknesses, and I am ready to defend those. I believe that I will do the best job for that individual, and I think that confidence comes through in a strong way, not an arrogant way, which sometimes my competitors can do. I just come through as I really am the right person to do this. And my company and my team I put together are the right ones. And I think that belief in it shows, and that's how I compete.
So you're basically saying be genuine, right?
Yes, I just, and that's basically how I do all my negotiations. It comes from a place of genuineness. Like I truly am honest and believe in what I'm trying to sell, for lack of a better word. If it's myself or my company or ideas.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. I had one other thing to add, if
Yes.
I could just jump in here, that I had written down, and I did want to share this, that I really believe that you lose nothing when you at least ask. And how you ask makes the difference. Know your facts, be sincere, but balance that with tenacity. And those are just some thoughts that have helped me when I've been in that situation.
Yeah, thank you. I want to remind all the attendees, and we have a nice crowd, and I know we have people from St. Louis, we have Kansas City representatives, a lot of Columbia folks, so thank you. But please, if you have a question, enter it into the chat box and we'll get to it after the discussion. We're going to switch gears a little. We're going to talk about personal branding. So personal branding is the process of marketing your strengths, assets, and value. This issue is really important for women, especially when you work in a male-dominated field. So what strategies do you use to set yourself apart? And I'm going to ask all of you to answer this. And Sheila, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, I think our panelists have said a lot of good things already. What strategies do we use? By being honest, by, having integrity. I think that's what sets us apart. I'm always trying to improve myself. I read a lot of leadership books and how to improve my leadership skills. So I feel that, I'm constantly evolving and improving myself. If I listen, how can I listen more or listen better? I'm self-aware. How can I be better at being self-aware? Transparency is important. Am I being transparent? So I'm always trying to look at myself to see, how am I improving my skills? And then hopefully that comes off as, what I want to be, caring, wanting to help the faculty, the students, the staff in achieving their goals and so forth. So basically in my role, I like to serve the campus, and I want to see how I can serve the campus better and raise the status of the university. And I do that by trying to improve myself. I actually keep a notebook of ideas. So if I hear of something, if I read something like, oh, this is something I should try either personally or something that I can introduce to the campus to make us a better serving community.
That's great. Susan?
When Sheila was saying that, I was thinking, yes, like when I tell people what motivates you, Susan, in addition to my career and my family, I'm like, I just want Columbia to be the best place it can be. And so my personal brand kind of comes across like that. Like I'm really trying to make Columbia the best it can be by adding any kind of qualities that I have to the table. And, I tell my children all the time, I learn the most about myself as I'm raising these children, I found. I tell my children all the time, find something you're good at and then be really good at that. And for me, that throughout my life has been academics. I've been a really good academic learner. And so I've applied that as my personal branding. So when I came out of public accounting, working at Deloitte in St. Louis, and came to Columbia and started working at an accounting firm, and then got on with this startup commercial construction company. So I was coming into an industry I did not know. So I immediately started becoming knowledgeable and training myself. So my branding is always to be really knowledgeable about the subject, so that when I speak, I speak from a place of authority and facts and evidence. So that's what I feel is my branding of when I come into a room and want to talk about a subject, that I am knowledgeable about it.
Great advice. Carolyn, and I don't know, I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, but if anyone wants to talk about social media, because that is sometimes people use social media for personal branding. I'm not saying you have to talk about that, Carolyn, but
Well, I was looking in the chat box because Lauren from Omaha used one of the words I was going to use, and that's, she said, how do you lead authentically? But I was going to say my branding, I like to have authenticity in mind. And I'm a big follower of Brene Brown, and she's always talking about being your authentic self. And I think that's the branding that I seek to have. I've always appreciated people that even when they don't agree with me, I know where I stand with them. So I don't like to surround myself with a bunch of yes people. I want to be able to be authentic myself and expect that of those around me. I also think humor is huge. Especially now, 2020, would you please go away? But I think if you can infuse some humor and some optimism into conversations, that can be powerful as well. And I think, in terms of, she had a question about what it meant to lead authentically, and if we knew of any good leadership books. So actually we'll have the other panelists chime in on that too. I get a lot of mine off of the internet, so not quite social media, but like Audible books, because I can multitask and do those at the same time. And then our leaders here at Mizzou tend to send books our way. So it's funny, I walked in this morning, I had a package from the chancellor, and it's another leadership book.
That's a really good book.
Good. Well, it's on my desk now. So.
Great. Debbie.
Well, all good thoughts, all good practices from my colleagues on our panel today. I would just say, speak when you have something to say. Otherwise, be the best listener that you can, and be direct. I really, sometimes and maybe this also has to do with being of a certain group. I have three very dear friends from campus that we all work together in the advancement office, and we call ourselves WOCD, which is a little bit the OCD part, but women of a certain decade. So we were we're all born, and two of our women are retired now. Myself and another woman still works here on campus, and if anything, we've learned to be direct and lead by example. And I think that those are some good words of wisdom that define me in my personal branding. And I think that's very important. My friends, my colleagues know what to expect from me in terms of being honest and direct, but kind, kind and sincere, because that's, you find out you can get what you want when you ask in the nicest way and be tenacious about it.
Great advice. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about networking. Networking connects us all. It's networking that expands our worldview and creates opportunities for us. And we know that networks are critical to career success, but many people still find it challenging to network. So what advice do you have for women who are trying to build their network? Debbie, I'm going to let you kick this off because I know you have some experience with conferences that assist people in their networking.
Yes, in past, I guess since about 2013 or so, during Life Sciences Week that we traditionally host here on campus, I coordinate a career conference for graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. And it is a professional personal development type of conference, but the very last session that we've done on that particular conference has to do with networking. And we encourage our attendees to practice at this networking event, because it's in a non-threatening kind of environment. We're sort of all in this together. And that has, I've heard anecdotal feedback that just having that safe space to network in a familiar environment as a first step has paid great benefits, dividends. So I would just say to practice with people that you know. Ask them about their jobs so that you develop a greater comfort in eventually asking strangers those very same questions, whether you're at scientific meetings or other kind of conferences. Hopefully we'll all be able to go back to those good old days in the future. But and also a good way to sort of kick off networking is to ask someone what they do. Ask them about their job. Most people like to talk about what they do, or especially if they like their jobs. And that's one way to sort of break the ice. And the questions back and forth generally will come from that. So those are some, at least initial networking techniques that I think help people overcome that fear of stepping forward to ask. And networking is so important in our world today. It's how you make progress in many ways.
Yeah. Susan?
Yes, for me, networking is important, and it has been, because that's where a lot of times my job leads will come from, because I'm in a construction business. So how did I do that in my life? I found something I would be interested in, such as give service in the community, join in an organization such as Rotary, and then I was able to really lead in those organizations so that individuals would see, and I would get to know the people working together. I would get to know them personally. And those networking opportunities have been wonderful for me. In all the organizations I'm involved in, that's how I network. That's how I build my network of individuals. In construction, I do that same thing by serving on boards through the AGC and different things. But most importantly, networking in my community has been the crucial part. That's the part that enriches me as a person. And so I really wanted to make sure that all of you look for networks in places you might not expect. And I have an example I like to give when I talk to people. So I'm an older mom, and it's harder for me to get to know parents of the other children. So I thought, even though I'm super busy, I'll volunteer to be the treasurer of the PTA at the elementary school. I have to tell you that volunteer role has provided more networking opportunities and more meeting people that I would not have normally met in this community. Same thing with Cub Scouts. I volunteered for Cub Scouts, and the other person that volunteered happened to be Brant Bukowski, who started Veterans United with his brother. So like, it's just these strange opportunities that you may not look for that. And you're doing it in a, when you network in those types of situations, it's in a really comfortable, low pressure situation. You get to know those individuals in a different way. And my main point to everyone listening today is, yes, join the organizations for your professional development, but look for other networking opportunities in your community. You just don't know who you're going to meet or who you're going to, or where that's going to lead down the road.
Yeah, I love that advice. And I remember early on in my career, it was sitting on nonprofit boards. I mean, the connections that I made and the connections that I've kept. And I know all of you know, my colleague, Ellie Hayes, she's our outreach director. And so networking with what we do around the state, you know, that's such a vital part of our job. And now we've all had to learn how to virtual network, you know, through Zoom or with a phone call, but we'd rather meet in person, but it's still good to connect with everyone.
Yeah. So Lauren had a question. She says, is anyone an introvert? I find networking a challenge because it takes a lot. And I think, Lauren, that's what I'm talking about. Find something you're passionate about that gives you energy, such as, for me, it's Rotary or economic development, something like that, which provides energy to you because you're doing something you're passionate about, and network through that way. I think that might be a good way for an introvert to do it. The other piece of advice I have on networking, especially if you do it through volunteering, through organizations. I had a mentor tell me when I was 25 years old, she said, I'm appointing you to this role, but always remember, you do this volunteer job as if it is your real job. Do it the same way, because this is the only way a lot of people are going to know you. And so it is reflected in how you volunteer and how you serve in these organizations. So,
yep. More great advice. Yeah, that's fantastic. So staying on the topic of networking, so we build our networks, but then sometimes we don't use it because we're afraid of imposing on others. So how do you recommend asking someone in your network for a favor? Susan?
What I know is that my past experience with individuals is that if I ask you a favor, that I am asking because it is important, because it's valuable, that it means something to me, and therefore I hope that you will believe in it also, or at least support my vision of it, and that also I will return the favor. I'm not an individual that just will take and not give back. If I ask you for a favor, I completely expect you to ask a favor for me in return. A couple times I've had individuals ask me for a favor, and I did that. And then when I took my turn to call and ask for a favor and they said no, I was deeply offended and quite angry about it. So I think that's my rule of thumb about asking for favors. I'm very genuine in it. I'm not going to be frivolous in my ask.
Yeah. Carolyn. Oh, you're mute.
You got to have one person do that. Okay, how I ask for a favor, at first I take myself off mute. I would say I do less asking favors than asking advice. So I usually, when I go to somebody, I usually couch it in those kind of terms, because if I'm coming to someone asking for a favor, it's likely somebody that's very respected in my network. And I try to get their perspective and their advice first. And sometimes their advice is going to be, well, I can hook you up with this person, or you should do this instead. And so I think I just turn it around and say, I'm asking for advice because I respect you. And sometimes that'll turn into more than that. As far as networking goes, I don't know if it's been mentioned, I didn't hear it. LinkedIn, I think, is fantastic. So if you're not on that, that's a wonderful way to network all over. And then you could get into separate groups within LinkedIn that really focus on an interest area of yours. So if you're not on LinkedIn, I would recommend you try that.
Yeah. Any other advice or comments? Networking is such an important topic and so vital to our careers. Anything else?
Well, as an introvert, I just like to say LinkedIn is a great way to develop and establish a network. And you don't have to be the person that walks across the room and says, hi, I'm, Sheila Grant and so. You can easily do it on LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn is kind of an introvert's new way of networking.
Yeah, I
Well
love
put.
it. Yes. Okay, so research from the Harvard Business Review has found that women who have an inner circle of close female contacts are more likely to land executive positions with greater authority and higher pay. So do you feel that in male-dominated industries, supporting other women becomes even more critical? Sheila?
That's a big yes. I really do feel that way. You guys have probably heard Madeleine Albright, our first woman who served as a Secretary of State, say that there's a special place in hell for women who do not help other women. And I think she's exactly what she was talking about. In my 26 years or so plus of having received my PhD in engineering, I have seen many times just subtle, but sometimes overt biases. And it's important to have that support and get advice from other women and have other women help you that probably have experienced the same type of biases. How do you handle that situation? Do you walk away? Do you make it an issue? So having, women help each other, I think that's the one way that we're going to get our foot in the door. But once you get the foot in the door, it's going to be you that's going to, soar and achieve great things.
Yeah, and I wonder, Sheila, because, being in engineering, like maybe from when you went to school and got your degree, and now as you've advanced in your role. So I assume you've seen a lot of changes in that field.
You would think, but yeah, I have a daughter who's also an engineer, and she's a civil engineer and she works for a consulting firm. And I'm still shocked at some of the things she tells me that, people call her baby doll or Barbie doll or this and that in the field. So I don't know. I think we still have a long ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, she's got a great role model, you. So that's great. So let's see, Carolyn.
So I would say women are pretty good at forming social networks, and I think that's a good place to start. And I also think having a generational gap can be very useful. My tightest group of female friends, we have kind of a girls club, and in that we have every decade from 30s to 60s represented by one person, and I'm not going to tell you which decade I represent, but I find that it's just great. I mean, we can get together 4 times a year and it feels like no time has passed, but on every topic we bring very different perspective, and I think that's valuable. Make it social, make it fun, and make it something where you're getting a lot of different perspectives to help guide you. And I think knowing how other women are facing challenges is fantastic when we're facing our own.
Yeah. Thank you. So if you have questions, as I said, just submit them in the chat box. We're going to get to Q&A here in just a little bit. If you're tweeting us out on Twitter, please use the hashtag #WiserComo, and also follow us on our @WISER Twitter handle. So finally, COVID-19 has changed our world personally and professionally. So I want to ask each of you, how are you coping? And what advice do you have for other women to get through this pandemic? Sheila?
Oh, yeah, I think we're all experiencing COVID-19 fatigue. And I got to give kudos to women out there who are raising the kids and having their career and so forth. It is not easy. Really, what I'd say and what I do is you've got to set aside all the social media, your phone, the internet, go out and do something fun and relaxing. You know, forget about the worries of the world right now. Go walk your dog, go do something fun with the kids or whatnot. But have some fun and relax.
Yeah, I totally agree. Susan?
You know, COVID has helped me really center myself more. I have a tendency to get strung out a little bit with commitments and so COVID has helped me center. So that's been a positive that's taken away. It's been really hard for me though, because I am an extrovert. I can't believe I really thrive off of other energy and other individuals. And so it's been really hard for me to keep myself energized during this because I don't have that external energy from the others around me and that interaction from those. You know, I've been managing okay. Small business has been interesting because I have to be conscious of my employees and their demands. I have an assistant that's been with me 23 years. Her experience is invaluable to me. She has a kindergartner and a third grader. So we now have virtual school at Hubert Builders. I've got the conference room right now, but in a minute it'll have a third grader and a sixth grader. And then we have a kindergartner out in the reception area. You know, I'm just trying to be really flexible and caring and graceful. My clients, I can sense their tension. I can sense tension in others, and people are more irritable. So it's just been trying to make sure I'm leading by example again for others and how to do that. So, you know, there are silver linings. My niece is an attorney out in Raleigh, Durham. She's about 10 years younger than I am. So we have fun sharing silver linings of COVID back and forth. And so it's been kind of a fun game with her because we have found the silver linings. So
that's great. Debbie?
Well, I'm trying to be as responsive and as helpful as possible to people that I interact with. I have been reaching out to friends that I haven't spoken with in a long time, and that is pretty amazing. Even as far back as high school, I grew up in Chicago, and so it's just kind of fascinating to touch base with people. I also like to reconnect with memories, and while at the same time look to the future. I also let myself grieve, and I think that's a very healthy activity, because there are things we need to grieve about that we've lost, that probably won't come back after COVID restrictions cease. But take some time to grieve about things that are different now in your life. And also, I like the fact we talked about humor, and I think that's really important. You know, bring humor to yourself, bring humor to those around you, and enjoy the good things that are still possible.
Yeah, thank you. That's great advice. Carolyn?
Yeah, I like that people have mentioned silver linings. I think the first thing is just remember we're all in this together, because sometimes if you think I'm just doing this on my own, it's very overwhelming. I think there's a lot of silver linings that I've found. You know, being able to work from home on certain days, that's an hour I don't spend in the car going back and forth to work. And so if I look at that, then I can do something positive with that hour. I personally like to go on a bike ride and put my earbuds in and listen to something, either music or an audible tape. So I call it a tape. Now you know which generation I'm in.
we're there.
But yeah, I think looking for the silver linings and then just focusing on the things that you can control. So much of this is out of our control, and that's a very frustrating place to be. I've just tried to tell folks, just give up perfect. Perfect isn't going to happen in 2020. We're going to do the best that we can in some very weird situations, and we're going to get out of this. So just keeping the positive and then trying to pass that on to others. I try to challenge folks every week to do something. One week was thank somebody every day. Pick one person and thank them for something that they've done, or show gratitude, or just check in with somebody you haven't heard from. So to me, taking the focus off of everything that's wrong, taking the focus off of trying to be perfect, and just using this time to learn what we can from it, and try to prioritize and leave some time for fun and get away from the TV.
Yeah. Oh boy, isn't that the truth?
I think perfection is overrated. I agree with you, Carolyn. And I've been a perfectionist my whole life. My mother was a perfectionist. In a sense, you were rewarded for that. You were rewarded for that extra achievement. But then I think back to my dear dad, who would say, one of his phrases was, good enough for the guys I go with. You know, it's good enough is good. And that helps your mental health tremendously.
That is all great advice. Thank you. So I'm thrilled we have time for Q&A, and we've got some great questions. I'll start with this. Do you have any advice on strategies to adjust to a new profession or personal responsibilities? I am early in my career and my job duties have expanded. I feel continually overwhelmed trying to tackle new responsibilities, particularly balancing responsibilities at home. And as we just said, that's even more challenging now during the pandemic. If you could share one piece of advice to your younger self about leadership, what would it be? Anyone want to start?
I think to the individual that asked the question about the balancing, and she's early in her career, I really want her to think about the conversations we've had earlier in this discussion about advocating for yourself and asking for things, because this is the example I was using where so let's say you say your duties have expanded. Maybe you're not able to handle those responsibilities and adequately because you're balancing all those things. So you're advocating for yourself and your family at that point, because if you don't, your family and trying to take care of them will suffer. So think about what it is you may want to ask for that can help you with that balancing. Go in and hope that the individual you're asking is compassionate and will understand. Maybe they're so wrapped up. What I can tell you right now is that leaders, all of us that are in leadership positions, are struggling as much as the individuals that are at the very beginning of their career. This is a challenging time. We're trying to do the best we can. And sometimes if someone doesn't come up to us because we're so in our circle and say, I really need some help with this. I've got this extra responsibility, but I'm juggling these things. Ask for that and see. And hopefully, I'm not even hopeful. If they say something that may not be with your values, there are other opportunities right now, even during COVID. So really think about that.
Anyone else? There's another question that I think is really important and interesting on how do you pick a mentor? What do you look for? How do you ask someone to mentor you?
Well, I would say it depends on, it depends on what setting you're in. And I can speak from the academic setting of graduate students seeking out mentors and so forth. You can ask people around you. You can observe people in lab meetings and different experiences like that, where you can feel a connection. You can investigate their backgrounds to see areas that they've worked in, and see if you feel that there could be a connection there. So that's one way to kind of do a little bit of homework before you reach out. Also by talking to other people, this person's really, in tune to this area, and that's one way to start it.
That's great. Another question is about negotiation. They wrote that they went through a negotiation a few years back. It did not go well. And how do you walk away from that? How much should you push? And when should you say thank you for your time and walk away from the negotiation?
I would say that you have to be your own best advocate and make sure that you're not backing down on yourself. So that self-confidence is going to be an important aspect of that. And sometimes that's hard to find. But I think I walk away when it doesn't feel right. I think if I feel like my integrity is being compromised, that's when I walk away. I feel like we need to get up every morning and spend the day doing the right thing. And if you do that, the rest will figure itself out. And you know, even if you fail at a negotiation, it's a learning experience. And so, you know, every day we should be looking at the good and the bad things that happen and say, what was I supposed to learn from that? And then hang on to it.
I know from my, when I'm negotiating for a project, I'm super competitive. So I do not want to have to drive by a job site and see my competitors sign on that job site if I lose the negotiations. But so through the 30 years I've been doing this, I have learned enough about myself and had enough bad experiences to know if the negotiations aren't going well and it's really feels wrong, the job will feel wrong. It will be, I'm going to, like, how much will I win by getting that job? Because I probably have a year of really bad experiences with that client. So I have learned, my older self knows, and it's still hard for me to do, I have to walk away because you can learn so much in the negotiations about that individual. So I agree, like Carolyn says, trust your gut on it.
Yeah. I have another question. How can women help uplift people of color, especially women of color, whether it's mentoring or removing barriers?
Well, I'll jump in on that one. This is a huge topic to me. I feel like there's a lot of questions about what books we've been reading. I've been reading every book I can related to this topic. I've got a mixed family, so I'm passionate about making sure that we're advocating for each other. I think just understanding people that look different than us is the place to start. I think we can do more harm than good when we go into a conversation or we try to advocate in a way that isn't genuine. So a lot of self-reflection needs to happen before that, self-education, and then really being an advocate in all audiences. I think one of the things that makes me uncomfortable is people that say and act one way in a certain crowd and act differently in a different crowd. And I think you need to be authentic in all of those interactions, and they shouldn't look different.
Hear,
Right.
hear.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm just really, I'm radical in my ask to make sure women of color are included on any organization or board that I'm on. I don't, and I'm very purposeful in my ask to include them. Like, I want it to be something they believe in too. I don't want them to just be asked so they add diversity. I want them to be asked because it is something they're passionate about and their voice needs to be heard. And I'm sincere in that and genuine. And so I think that comes through. And I know I have tons more work to do on that, but I'm really work hard.
That's great. I'm going to try to combine two questions here. See how this works. We have a question that says, have you experienced a negative stigma from being a confident, independent woman? And then another question about, have you experienced professional bullying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'll answer some of this. In engineering, I've seen subtle as well as overt biases. I've had comments made to me that, well, we knew you were going to be a good teacher, but we didn't think you were going to be a good researcher. So, and then other comments were, when I first started in engineering here, some of the people left Playboy magazines out in our conference room. So, you know, there's just different biases that we've seen here. And the way you overcome it is you have to address it. After that first incident, they weren't going to do anything about it. And I'm like, well, this is a hostile work environment. You need to do something about it. So you have to be proactive in making sure that it's an environment where everyone can succeed. And you have to have your colleagues, in my case, particularly the male colleagues, know that, you know, you are a valuable member of the department, of the college. You do have, you know, talents and gifts to give to the department if you just get the chance to do it.
Fantastic. So I want to end, there's been a lot of discussion in the chat box about great books to read or maybe a great podcast to listen to. So if each of you will maybe give some advice on a great book. I think we're all at this time looking for books to read and or a good podcast that inspires you. Carolyn?
Lately, I'm on a Mel Robbins kick. And so she's got several Audible, I feel like I'm doing a commercial for Audible. any kind of book on phone. But the one I'm doing right now is called Kick Ass. And it's individual stories where she talks to people about kind of where their sticking point is, where they can't quite get to that next step, and how to break through that. So that's a great one. You can do a story on a walk and get your fix for the day.
That's great. Susan?
Right now I'm reading Making the Magic Happen. It's about a leadership style where you create environments that individuals are able to achieve their highest potential. So that's hence the Making the Magic Happen. I cannot remember the author at this moment, but that's been a really good book that's been really kind of fun to read during COVID, even as a leadership style.
Debbie?
I just am a big supporter of Brene Brown, and her writings over the years inspire me. So that would be my suggestion. Her work is timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Sheila, I know that you've written or put some of the books that you're reading in the chat box, so thank you.
I really like The Good to Great by Jim Collins because
Mm-hmm.
it challenges you to go from good to great. How do you get to that? Don't be satisfied with the status quo. How do you get to become great? And it's a really interesting book about some companies that go from good to great.
That's great. Well, thank you for all your advice. And I would remind everyone to listen to WISER Conversations podcast. It's been so much fun for me to be able to highlight women around the state in the science and entrepreneur field, research field. Carolyn was on my show. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun. So I want to thank Carolyn, Susan, Sheila, and Debbie. I know you all are very busy. I appreciate you taking the time to be a part of our 2020 COMO WISER. And then I would like to invite everyone to register for our St. Louis WISER events, which are lunch seminars. So thank you everyone for starting your day with us, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.